People who completely turned their life around after 35, what made the biggest difference? Story 1. Realizing that no matter what you do in life, you'll enjoy it more if you get proper sleep, exercise, and eat well, and then actually implement good habits. Different people will enjoy different jobs, activities, and partners, but for 99.9% of people, being rested, fit, and healthfully nourished will give you a clear head and the energy to get done whatever you want to do. Also, as you age, it becomes even more necessary to monitor these three things. I see people my age, 43, that don't have these things well managed, and even small missteps have awful consequences. Story 2. Realized I needed to end my marriage around 35. Finally got divorced. Started to realize my bad marriage wasn't a fluke. I was repeating a pattern from my family of origin and needed to completely reevaluate my relationship with myself and everyone else in my life. Dumped a lot of toxic friends and family. Did a lot of self-help and therapy. Learned about attachment types and codependency and personal boundaries. Then at 40, met the love of my life. And 4 years later, we're living our best Brady Bunch life with our kids and cats. Answer. Wow. Similar experience here. Just took me a long time to pull the proverbial trigger. We divorced when I was 36, but we stayed in some sort of weird, exclusive pseudo-codependency relationship for another 3 years. Once I finally completely forced our lives to separate, I was finally able to grow. Now, living my best life, remarried, this time to the man of my dreams, and we have 2 dogs. We are a couple of dinkwads. Story 3. Started my own business. It was hard. Really hard. I kinda leveraged my marriage a bit to do it. But I went from an unemployed father who did housework and cooked dinners while taking care of the kids, to a self-employed father who does housework and cooks dinners while taking care of the kids with an income. Story 4. Finally realizing I wasn't going to die by the time I was 30. I figured then that I needed to smarten up and get my act together. Answer. Darn, I wasn't expecting to find this feeling in a comment here. I am 29, smoking plant substance daily, and pretty depressed because I somehow think my life is going to end soon anyways. It won't, and I will need to fix myself. How did you get out of that mental space? Like, I can talk about this openly, but I can't seem to want to change it. I know that I will once I hit rock bottom, but why? Help. Story 5. Losing 90 LEBs. Increase confidence, which increased my salary by 80. Got a wife. Got a kiddo. Got a house. Literally was 90 LEBs away from the American dream. People treat you different, including yourself. Story 6. Being realistic with things I actually need, nothing to function day to day, cutting away all the rest, forming a proper budget and sticking to it. So many people tell themselves they need things and have literally never experienced life without those things. Thing is, you can't tell this to people or they get all huffy and insist that they absolutely need it, or they can't get through life. And it'll take an experience like losing everything, which they'll never go through, in order to understand what I'm saying. You can survive out of a bag with 1 change of clothes. Work up from there. Answer. I could fit all of my items in 4 or so boxes for most of my adult life, so I moved into a small van for about a year. I was not prepared for how much I would miss having a space for my hobby. Painting while sitting on park benches and front car seats didn't quite cut it. I struggled with this more than living without running water. I have since moved into an apartment, and I dislike how much junk I've accumulated. I recently started donating and giving away anything I haven't used or thought about in over 6 months, furniture included. Every item gone helps me breathe easier. Story 7. Realizing no one's coming to save me. Once I stopped waiting for a sign and treated rock bottom like a trampoline instead of a grave, everything changed. Story 8. Finally graduated the State U at 36. Started law school at 50. I just got tired of being a mess up. Life is not perfect now, but so much better. Story 9. Leaving my country behind and starting a new life in Spain at 35, soon 10 years ago. I miss my family, but for the rest, my life's been a total success since then. Story 10. Realized how much I was holding myself back mentally and career-wise by daily drinking and smoking plant substance. Used to think after a few beers and smokes, I was in my happy place, but realized if you're in your happy place all the time, it's not that happy a place. Haven't completely turned my life around, but it's going in the right direction. Still enjoy a beer and smoke on Saturday nights, but am in a better job and a mentally better place. Don't know how I lived like that for so long. Answer. This really resonates with me. If you're in your happy place all the time, it's not that happy a place. I did something similar. Used to be a daily driver thinking it was keeping me sane and content, but it just dulls everything down so you think it is. There are better ways to find fulfillment, peace, contentment, and they're harder to earn, but they're worth it. Story 11. Realizing no one is going to save me, and that complaining fixes nothing. Success is a lot of small things done right, over and over again, and not one big thing done once. Story 12. Going back to school to gain a career. Not that I didn't do well prior I was in construction, but having a career and not a job was definitely an empowering moment for me and changed my life completely. Story 13. Being very cautious about who you let into your life and also learning how to utilize boundaries. A lot of people can take your kindness for granted. Story 14. Quit trying to be cool, got back in shape, took work seriously. You can massively change your life in 1,000 days. Story 15. Realizing that everything isn't about money. Focusing on time, friends, contentment, work-life balance, and just life overall. Answer. I just recently am starting to realize this. I've been trying to buy my happiness for years, and it feels like I've just been filling a hole in me with shoot. I don't yet fully know why, though. I'm admittedly in a pretty bad emotional place right now, and have had some dark fudge days over the last couple of weeks, but from the outside, I seem to have it all. Story 16. 33 here, but in the middle of a huge personal metamorphosis. I finally got an ADHD diagnosis and medications that work, and suddenly I'm extroverted and outgoing and chatty. Turns out anxiety medications were only half the battle. It's actually an issue because my family can't reconcile the sudden change. My mom actually kind of doesn't like me that much anymore and gets pretty angry over the whole prospect of me needing medication at all. Answer. I dealt with that in high school and college when I was treating my depression and ADHD. My big mistake was allowing my family in the beginning to dictate my medication use with their judgment of using medication as a crutch, all while asking me when I'm getting my next refill so they can scalp off it. It's an uncomfortable transition for your family because they're not used to you defining yourself. They'll get over it. Story 17. Focused on being healthy. Asking myself if my behaviors were healthy. Then deciding to make small incremental changes to the behaviors that I deemed unhealthy. For me, to each their own. I applied this to both my physical and mental health. Story 18. Breaking up with my manipulative girlfriend. Putting myself into therapy to cope with the depression. Getting diagnosed as ADHD and medicated. Realizing some of my closest friends were toxic AF and routinely rooting for me to fail. Finding a creative outlet for my angst. Started life over with a new artistic hobby. Cultivated a new circle of friends who were supportive and emotionally intelligent. Story 19. It's wild how much basic self-care, sleep, diet, exercise can feel like a superpower once you actually commit to it. Losing weight was a game changer for me too, not just physically, but in how the world responds to you and how you show up for yourself. Cutting out toxic people and habits is like removing anchors holding you back from that momentum. Funny how the boring stuff ends up being the secret sauce to turning everything around. Story 20. I read Robert Wright's book on Buddhism. I'm not an avid follower of Buddhism or anything, but the way he explained impermanence really opened my eyes about life, love, pain, emotions, consciousness, beliefs. There are some deeply weird, emo implications of impermanence in Buddhism that I won't go into to stay on topic. Basically, if you're in pain now, or anxious, or sad, or angry, etc., ask yourself if you have always been like that. If the answer is no, and it always will be, that can't be who you are. If you were happy once, you can be happy again. Not saying it's easy, but it flipped my perspective. This helped me get out of a rut, helped me change careers. It also works the other way. If you are successful, worth remembering that you weren't always there, keeps you humble. Story 21. Lost weight and started exercising. It's changed everything for me. Mentally and physically, I feel like I've added years to my life. Story 22. Got promoted to a well-paying job that they were willing to train me for since I didn't have the experience or schooling. Story 23. Dropping all of the toxicity out of my life and burning it all. Telling my abusive mother to go fudge herself after telling her exactly how I feel about her. God, that felt good. Quitting Eto, dropping the shoot, friends. Taking care of myself first, mentally and physically. Started making huge strides in my career by taking the risks I was always scared of. I used to navigate life through the lens of fear, and I'm just not willing to do it anymore. It made me a better everything. I feel like I can finally step into the world as the best version of myself. Win-win for all. Story 24. Slow and steady change is what works. It's slow and boring, but putting your reps in day after day is what leads to lasting change. Overnight dramatic change is so rare for any age. Story 25. I stopped playing video games. I recognized that it was sort of a black hole for time, and I used it to escape a lot. It's important to note that it's not the case for everyone, but for me, I have no self-control for it, and I realized 7 years later I just finished my master's in engineering. Vague for obvious reasons. Life is great, became a better person, work out a lot, and have a good job. Answer. I've watched a lot of friends fall into this black hole, putting aside school and relationships to dedicate 40 hours a week alone to gaming. One good friend of mine is still on the ill. Apply for paramedic school. Next week, let me get to my goal of reaching Diamond First excuse, and it's been years of using this excuse. All he's done is sit at his laptop, study for an hour, and then game the rest of the day when he's not working a lifeguarding shift. Story 26. I got a breast reduction at 35. 36 to flat as a pancake. I spent over 20 years living with constant pain and embarrassment, and it's no exaggeration to say that I feel like my boobs and uterus, which I also yeeted, robbed me of my teens and 20s. Now I've got my life back. Story 27. PGE burned down the town I was living in, and I got a good-sized insurance payout. Just having the money to take a breather and have time to think changed everything. Story 28. I watched my dad turn his life around after my youngest sister moved out of the house. He went from being broke, tipsy, and unemployed to actually realizing he needed to take care of himself, and having a job was nicer than being broke all the time. I just think he wasn't ready to be a dad, and the stress of parenthood crippled him. But he was probably 38 when he started putting his life together. Now he's almost retired, owns a $200K property, and has a full retirement. We grew up in a crappy single wide, so you can pull a 180 in your later years. Story 29. For me, divorce really helped me turn it all around. I was able to better control my finances and get off the antidepressants. Story 30. At 37, was in a high-pressure job in a relationship that was hard and putting a ton of time into my hobby, trying to turn it into a business. Use substances, adult beverage, nicotine, TV, caffeine to cope. In a lot of ways, was just reliving my parents' life on autopilot. At some point, I got physically sick. Years of therapy kicked in. I finally accepted that I wasn't happy and wasn't going back. I was way past a healthy point. Went on leave at work. Eventually quit. Quit my hobby, which had turned into a nonprofit with a team. Took about 12 months to heal mentally and physically. Started working out for the first time in my life. At month 12, my relationship ended. Packed my stuff in a car and drove across country, and in the last 2 months started to settle in a new city. Spent a good chunk of this year letting go of addictions, nicotine, caffeine, and apps being the hardest. Feels like my brain is rewiring and learning to work differently. It'll be 2 years in August. Starting a new career path doing something artistic significantly changed how I show up with friends. The biggest shift is learning to listen to my body, my internal compass, versus what my parents, friends, or society at large tells me. All of my bad habits were ways of dealing with the dissonance between those voices. I can tell I still have a ways to go, but I definitely feel like a totally different person. Things that helped: IFS therapy, EMDR therapy, Ram Dass lectures on Spotify, alone time, working out, The Pathless Path, Paul Millard, Mastery, Robert Greene, getting into Buddhism, and this retreat I did in Sedona at this place called Spirit Quest. I just made the decision that my goals weren't about a job or a relationship anymore. My goal needed to be feeling good on the inside, and nothing else would matter until I felt that. Story 31. I got a huge contract awarded to me. Once completed, I had the resources to scale my business, get a home, car, and family. People who think money is not important has never been in deep, nerve-wracking financial struggle. Story 32. Started running and training consistently at 33. At 46, I reaped the benefits in better health and always having sport as a stress reliever and for maintaining structure and discipline in life. Story 33. Tracked calories, ate better, and made a gym plan I would actually stick to. The best kind. Took up hiking for cardio. Dropped a bunch of side gigs that made me money but also made me miserable. Surprise! By sticking to a budget, I'm financially great, but also my personal relationships are much better. Stop being online so much as well. The world can be okay once you're out in it. You realize how skewed online discussions and algorithms can be. Story 34. This was when I was 33 2 years ago, but leaving teaching was the best decision I ever made. What a horrendous, abusive, flaming dumpster fire of a field teaching is. I started working a job that has now become my new passion with a fraction of the stress and 10x more fulfillment. Consequently, my mental health has skyrocketed and I have quit drinking. Story 35. I spent a couple of weeks in jail. I did several months of intensive therapy. I moved to a new area to get away from old environments in conjunction with all of that. Then, after all of that, I had a very intense spiritual experience where, to be bluntly honest, Jesus appeared to me briefly. The details of the encounter would make it sound even less believable than the general concept itself. I was raised Catholic, but had stopped following the church around age 12, and had lost faith in Christ sometime around 15 to 20. I still always believed in God, just not the specifics of Christianity. I wasn't intoxicated. It wasn't a hallucination or delusion. It just happened. I don't know why me. In the aftermath, I did spend a week in inpatient psychiatric care recovering from that, and everything that led up to it. I didn't disclose that part of my story to the staff. Nothing good would have come from it. After that, I changed dramatically. It took time, but eventually I changed my life perspective and started working toward integrity, self-improvement, generosity, and charity as my priorities. When you go from being very selfish and lost for many years to prioritizing those things, it pays off tangibly and intangibly, fast and then compounds. Nobody who has met me in the past few years would ever believe I was who I was up until the encounter. M39. The future is going to be interesting. Story 36. This may or may not be a very specific catalyst or multiple for each individual. The important thing is that you have someone, friends, family, or a therapist, who helps you objectively identify what is holding you back and then holding yourself accountable on changing that. Story 37. Re-education and picked up a new career. Things worked out after I changed the sectors I was working in. Story 38. Stop drinking. Made a set of life goals to work towards. Exercise. Joined clubs for hobbies. Stopped engaging with narcissistic people in my family. Story 39. Ditto on releasing my mind from the shackles of I need to continually make more money. That and therapy, working out, cutting down on drinking, and a 10-day ayahuasca retreat all changed my life. Story 40. Currently at 30. I used to be a civil engineer here in Brazil. I worked 12-14 hours a day. Wasn't happy, always anxious, always dreaming about a better life. Suddenly, told my boss to go FCK himself, quit my career in construction sites, broke up with my girlfriend, deleted all my social media accounts, just kept my dog and my family, searching for new jobs, new people, learning chess, Chinese, and how to play guitar. Went to therapy, and I've been discovering myself. I don't even have a shadow of regret. I'd do it again 1,000,000 times. It takes courage to start all over. It's not easy at all. Anxiety is sometimes overwhelming, crippling. The biggest difference is that you feel more confident, feel more yourself, despite all the anxiety. It kind of pays off. I don't really know how to explain. I feel more alive. If you are going through something similar, be strong, keep going. At the end of the day, it's all about how you feel. Do you be yourself and make sure you love being yourself? It's going to be roadblocks, there's going to be tribulations, but always remember, this is a life experience. Accept the experience, appreciate the experience, and learn how to move on from things that don't serve you well, and find your journey, respect your journey, and love it. Story 41. Leaving my ex. I didn't realize that she was such an anchor to anything I wanted to do until I looked back after 2 years of being separated. Went back to school twice, started a new trade, started to work myself out of debt, started eating healthier, exercising, and all around a lot more happier. Story 42. Meds. If you're over 35 and are still dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD, or whatever, you're probably not going to outgrow it, beat it. But it can be managed well and completely change your life around. Definitely did for me. Story 43. I got my PhD and became a professor with a lot of graduate students, colleagues, and exciting research projects. Story 44. I was 33, so I'm hoping this counts. I enrolled in the local tech college for an introductory IT course. That turned into another, then my diploma. I was teaching the same material I was learning just 12 months beforehand. This led to a 20-year career as a lecturer in IT, a field that was just a hobby when I originally signed up. Always try to learn new things and never be afraid to change. Story 45. I'm still 34 for 5 more months, but what I'm already actively doing to make sure I can use me 35th year to get fit is losing weight working out. Story 46. The heavy drinking I did before getting married simply had to stop if I wanted to stay married. It took a long time, but after about 15 years I got there. Story 47. Not hiding in bathrooms and smoking fentanyl all day. I didn't realize if I just stopped maybe I wouldn't go to jail as much and people would like me. Who knew? Story 48. Quitting my stressful job and starting to run exercise almost daily changed things the most for me. For the longest time, I wasn't actually challenging myself, just adding more BS to my plate, thinking things would get better. Running and training for a job in a new field helped me get my confidence back. I actually set goals I wanted to achieve. Story 49. Got sober, filed for bankruptcy from debt I couldn't get out from, got a new job, moved, completely started over. It's been great. Story 50. Stop seeking validation. Be your own cheerleader. Obviously, learn to accept praise and criticism from people you respect with graciousness, but do not rely on it. Learn to take pride in your own actions and milestones without needing it from outside sources, and a sense of contentment is easier to obtain. Story 51. Around 35, I set boundaries with family, immersed myself in Joseph Campbell, and became the authority of my own life. Married at 40, set more boundaries, and later accepted myself for being a loner. Story 52. 34 10 years ago and homeless, 50K debt, I headed out for camp work, lived in my truck, and stripped down to bare basics. One of the best experiences of my life. Story 53. Stop boozing like it was my calling. Many seemingly unrelated aspects of my life improved drastically. Relationships with kids and my SO, professionally, financially, health-wise, etc. Turns out drinking a 12-pack as a warm-up exercise 6 out of 7 nights a week was not an ideal way to live. Who knew? Story 54. Ooh. I've realized that instead of a high-paying, high-stress job in a very expensive country, I could have a better quality life in a different country with a much lower-paying job but way less stressful in a much more affordable place to live, which in turn gave me more free time to spend on my family and hobbies and improve my health overall. I was so focused on career and working my jerk off for people that would have replaced me in a heartbeat that I forgot health, family, and safety comes first. Story 55. Circumstances. Circumstances are your family and neighborhood friends. Overcome those circumstances, or they will drag you down. Crabs in a bucket. Story 56. Quit drinking, participate in my recovery, and enlarge my spiritual life. My life has since done a 180 from miserable to wonderful. Story 57. So over time in my 30s, I quit drinking, took up marathons and triathlons, quit smoking, and finally married my longtime partner. But around 35, I started a gardening company and gave up being a prof. That's what made the biggest difference. It's been incredibly financially rewarding, has grown fast, and the work is literally therapy. Becoming more than financially secure at a job I love to do with 3 months off a year changed my life. Story 58. Left a toxic job after a college degree and 25 years in the industry to join a totally new, gentle, kind, and exciting profession. Story 59. I'm not going to learn anything from here. The people who turned 35 in the past are way different and from a completely different world than the people turning 35 now. Story 60. Value time over money. Stop chasing salary raises or consuming things that depreciate, and value time spent, shared experiences, instead. Life-altering mindset once reinforced. Story 61. Stop drinking, lost weight, and stopped giving a shoot what people thought. Last one is hard to do, and I definitely falter on it sometimes, but for the most part, I truly do not give a fudge what people think about me. Just gotta keep dropping your fudge as you go, and pretty soon you'll have no more fudge to give and you're free. Most of the time anyway. Story 62. Left everything behind when I was 50 and moved to Thailand, permanently. Life completely changed for a few years, then suddenly I found myself with a woman, a house, a car, a swimming pool, and ditto friends. You can run away, but not from yourself apparently. It seems I just like middle-class life. Story 63. Look at things more deeply from experience. Your attitude towards things around you is fundamental. Your view of people and the world changes in a more positive way. Look at the big picture of different sciences and apply those things. In my view, Story 64. Divorce. Obviously, this won't work for everyone, but it was a massive contributor to the 180 of my life. Post-marriage end, I went to therapy. I learned to take care of myself emotionally. I learned I have value. I went back to school. I got promoted again. I got remarried. I bought a home. I got a dog. I made new friends and rediscovered old one. All of this happened in my late 30s and early 40s. Story 65. I started taking full responsibility for the things I did that were objectively wrong. I started looking for the things that I had done to people and reaching out to genuinely apologize to them. Taking initiative as opposed to apologizing because someone caught you doing something wrong. Story 66. I got sober. I realized what was important to me had changed and discussed it with my partner. I burned out from being a perennial people pleaser and went to therapy to start taking care of myself. We had tough conversations about priorities and division of labor. I focused on diet, nutrition, exercise, sleep. I went from ideating to, well, I'm doing okay now. Still not sure what next steps are, but I know what they are not. Story 67. Weight loss. It will change your life in every way imaginable. The confidence helps you excel in all avenues of life. Story 68. Still turning it around, but getting tested for ADHD at 36 helped. Kicked World of Warcraft and all other MMOs. It's okay to game now and again. It's not okay to game every second of the day that I'm not sleeping or at work. I started going to meetups on meetup.com to find some groups, hung out with some people, went from being single for 5 years to in a relationship within 6 months because I got out and did something rather than waiting for things to happen for me. Story 69. Books. Read as many books as you can. Tools of the Titans was a game changer in my life. I can skip a meal, but I'll read 20 minutes of a book daily with no compromise. Story 70. I'm almost across the line. I was mentally stuck. I thought I was okay with what I had, but all I was doing was running away. I was afraid of failure, rejection, etc. My brain was doing anything in its power to distract myself and not put in the effort so that I can avoid suffering. I always had the power to change, but I was holding myself back. No motivation. All the consequences and regrets had finally reached me. What finally broke me was losing that special lady. She was giving me her love and I pushed her away. When I realized it was too late, I needed to reevaluate myself and remain mentally strong. Creating healthy repeating patterns, forcing myself to do things that are necessary, enjoying hobbies, and talking to people for support are the main things I have done. Just cleaning my desk started it all for better habits. There is still a lot of work to do, but I know I'm not sinking anymore. Story 71. I started to understand my parents. Why do they have certain habits and things used to make me so uncomfortable? I could see they are not perfect, and the way they do things are from some of their past experiences, or even from their parents. Understand them, and we can find a way to accept each other. Story 72. I started small, one step at a time. I put my right foot in, I put my right foot out, and shook it all about. Really turned my life around. Story 73. COVID. It allowed me to pause life and focus on myself. I did just that and came out better than ever. Story 74. Letting go of the idea that my life was about where I was going and that I had to punish myself to get there. Keeping focus in the moment, on the little things, and then letting them add up. Story 75. My ADHD diagnosis. The meds and cognitive therapy have turned me into a completely different human being. A year ago, I was so imprisoned by my executive dysfunction that I came very close to ruining my son's first vacation. My wife bailed me out of that disaster as she always had. Even after she saved the vacation, I still managed to make it one of the most mediocre trips by not being able to act and plan and follow through. Story 76. I had exhausted all of my previous ideas for a second career, and I was trying to figure out what to do. The funeral industry saved me. I needed something to do that was pretty intense, but worth doing. It was that, and more. It was interesting and honorable, and it mattered. Story 77. Stop smoking. Changing my diet drastically. An adult beverage is now reserved for celebrations and special occasions. My inspiration is my 3-year-old son. I want to be there for him and don't want to miss any activity or adventures. Story 78. Broke off a toxic relationship with an ex after over 7 years. Bought my own house. Started being consistent with the gym. Remembering that life is hard and no one has it figured out. Encourages me to be kinder to myself. Story 79. Went for my master's later on after marriage and kids. Didn't really change my life per se, but it made a hell of a difference. Story 80. Applying for a job I was unqualified for, but thought I could do. Got it. 3 years later, applied for another job I was unqualified for. Got it. Got married during the first job, had a kid during the second. Happiest I've ever been. I've used my own advice. Worst they can say is no, and you're still where you're at. Best they can say is yes, and change everything. Story 81. Not after 35. Am around that age now, but I was a shithead as a kid. Kicked out of high school for selling plant substance, joined the Navy during the war and mostly just drank, womanized, and was a general shitbag. Then I got out. The things I credit most are my partner. She really turned me around. And perhaps more relatably, I got some counseling and addressed the issues that were causing me to act poorly. Also, once I got a handle on my stressor, I found I didn't have the urge to use substances as much and got relatively sober. It took years, but I got my shoot together. That kid that was selling 20 sacks in high school just got done working on the lunar lander. The point of this is I found that by addressing my issues with help gave me the insight and the skill set to handle both my existing issues as well as have ammo for when the next ones come, because there's always another burden. Now, 10 years happily married, an awesome kid, a good job. If I can do it, so can anyone. I was straight trash. Story 82. I spent a long time doubting myself. Then eventually it turned into, everyone else has dropped off, and I'm still here. I'm still going. Story 83. Having a loving family. Found family counts too. Having a solid support network, a loving wife, and a healthy diet. Also, staying off electronics. Story 84. Exercise, diet, drastically reducing adult beverage consumption, sleep hygiene. Totally different, happier, more functional person now. Story 85. For many, hitting a personal low or experiencing a wake-up moment like a health scare, loss, or deep dissatisfaction sparked the clarity and courage to completely reinvent their life after 35. Story 86. At 34, became disabled and transformed into a new me that has trust issues and no room for the chronic people-pleasing I used to provide. About to turn 46, I realize how much I have learned since losing certain faculties. Understanding how MDD, PTSD, and the physical limitations will always be a part of me and affect me is important to make through my day-to-day, as much as giving up the part of me that used to believe I had to be all things to all people. For a short time, I made a choice that I rather not live than accept my new lot in life. I'm so thankful today that choice did not become my reality. I'm always learning, always growing, regardless of the struggles at times. I am grateful for the good moments. I cherish the absolute heck out of them. And I think it's the contrast, understanding that is the value and the difference. Story 87. I got a promotion to a completely different type of job, working for the management, doing data analysis stuff. This was complete different to me being on the shop floor. My confidence grew so much, I am a completely different person in a good way. Story 88. A good job. It was much easier for everything else to fall into place, fitness, sleep, etc., when I wasn't having to budget every week for necessities. Anytime I've been unemployed or unhappy with my work, it has eliminated my motivation to remain consistent with everything else. Story 89. A chronic illness followed by a spiritual awakening I did not ask for, followed by a pandemic, followed by a baby, alone, with the world's longest divorce running concurrently throughout. So I would say that unpleasant and/or unexpected circumstances beyond my control made the most difference. I'm awesome now. Story 90. I got a new job with better pay and appreciative management. This helped dig us out of debt and start a pension. 10 years on, we have more in savings than we were in debt. Not massive wealth, but can buy a boiler or car if one or other breaks down. Made a massive difference to mental health. Story 91. The sudden realization that half of life is already over. And this is not a horror story, but a catalyst. A person understands, what if everything stays this way? Am I okay with that? This moment often triggers a career change, divorce, or relocation. Story 92. I completely turned my life around at around 35. For me, the first thing was getting a dog. Yeah, I know not for everyone, but learning to be responsible for another life was the catalyst to changing my life. Second thing was meeting a mentor who saw something in me and took a chance on me. Changed my life. Story 93. I decided to go bankrupt after realizing I'd never catch up on my medical bills. Now I own a home, and my credit is excellent just 8 years after at age 45. I thought bankruptcy was going to ruin my life. But getting rid of that stress saved my sanity. Almost going homeless because I needed medical care is fudge up. The American system is fudge up. Story 94. I fell in love more deeply than I ever had before, only to have my heart shattered. This heartbreak followed years of emotional abuse from a previous long-term partner, substance abuse, internalized homophobia, misogyny, anger, and toxic masculinity. I reached a point where I nearly ended my own life, but my dog saved me. I realized that no one was going to.